Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching the NewsHour on Times Now. My name is Pranesh Kumar Roy. Attempt on author Salman Rushdie's life in New York has sent ripples across the world. Condemnation is pouring in from several world leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron, Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson, US President Joe Biden have called it an attack on free speech and have vowed to stand by the author. Remember, Rushdie is the author of the Satanic Verses and his writings led to death threats against him from Iran in 1980s. A bounty of $3 million has been offered till date to anyone who kills Rushdie. In fact, Iran's ultra-conservative newspaper has hailed the assailant who attacked the author, saying bravos to the man who tore the neck of God's enemy. The newspaper also described Salman Rushdie as apostate. Some of the Tehran residents echoed the same sentiments.
دو ساله از تلویزیون اخبار خودمون شنیدم، خیلی هم خوشحال شدم به دلیل اینه که اون غلطی که سلمان رشدی به پیغمبر ما کرد و امام حکمی که بر علیه ایشون صادر کرد بالاخره اون به نتیجه رسید. اینا هم باید بدونن دیر یا زود حق پیروز هم میشه و انشالله که به سزای اعمالش برسه.
خیلی حس خوبی بود که کسی که نویسنده کتاب آیات شیطانی بوده و امام در زمان حیاتش حکم ارتداد و حکم قتل ایشونو صادر فرموده بودن که گفت هر کسی این کار رو انجام بده مشکل نداره. واقعا باعث شگرف و خوشحالی که نشون میده کسانی که به مقدسات ما مسلمان‌ها بخوان توهین کنن علاوه بر عذاب اخروی که دارن تو این دنیا هم گریبانشون رو توسط افراد دیگه و سنت استدراجی که خداوند تو قرآن کریم فرموده بهش میرسه.
The attacker, viewers, has been identified as 24-year-old Hadi Batar, hailing from New Jersey. An examination of his social media profiles has revealed that he is sympathetic to Shia extremism. The attacker also reportedly posted Ayatollah Khamenei's picture on his Facebook page. Remember, it was Iranian leader Khomeini who had issued fatwa against Rushdie. Let's listen into some eyewitness accounts of how this attacker approached Rushdie and then attacked him.
I was heading down into the base of the amphitheater to take a seat for the morning lecture, and a male human came and attacked Salman Rushdie. I thought that he was stabbed about 6 to 8 times before they were able to grab a hold of the perpetrator. And then I was pretty much frozen in my steps.
Within seconds, right, Mr. Rushdie was seated, and then I think the assailant had him on the floor. Within seconds, security had run up to the stage to help him, and then people began to exit, and within 3 minutes, there was an announcement that everyone should evacuate the outside amphitheater.
Then Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, called on all Muslims to murder the celebrated author after his book Satanic Verses was deemed blasphemous. Following the fatwa, the translators and publishers of the book were also attacked. The Norwegian publisher of Satanic Verses was shot and wounded in Oslo in 1993. 2 years earlier, the Japanese translator of Rushdie's novel was stabbed to death in 1991. The Italian translator of his book was also injured in a knife attack in the same year. The Mumbai-born author was forced to go into hiding after a fatwa was issued against him in 1989. The issue of ban on the Satanic Verses has once again come into spotlight after attack on Rushdie. Then Rajiv Gandhi government had put a ban on the book. Natwar Singh, who was the minister in Rajiv Gandhi government, has spoken to Times Now, and look what he's saying. You have to hear it to believe it. He's still justifying the ban.
World-renowned author Salman Rushdie was stabbed in his neck while he was addressing a literary event in New York State in America. Immediately he was rushed to the hospital and is said to be on a ventilator. Many times Salman Rushdie, while in his books as well, especially if you can want to name some of his books.
Well, Rajiv Gandhi, I was a minister then. Yeah. Rajiv Gandhi government. So Rajiv asked me, what do we do? I said, ban the book. Because it is going to lead to law and order problems, as it is already done in Kashmir. and this could spread. But I don't want to be sentimental about this. If the law and order problem spreads and the Muslim population gets agitated, then we will be faced with a serious situation. But why? It has nothing to do with appeasing politics. Congress party is a secular party. So we are not going to appease anybody. It was purely keeping in mind the law and order situation. That's all.
Former Foreign Minister Natwar Singh there speaking on the ban that was imposed by the Rajiv government. Let's open this up. Sanju Verma, the national spokesperson of the BJP, Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist, Sanjay Jha, author, Lokesh Jindal, Congress leader, completes the panel. Also on the show is Atis Tasir, author and journalist. Now, good evening to all of you. Let me begin by asking you, Mr. Jindal, what do you think happened with Salman Rushdie? Is this not a Sar Tan Se Juda attack? Is this not Islamist intolerance?
It was unfortunate, condemnable, and something that is engulfing the globe at large. There is a tendency towards radicalization and violence that is taking place all over the world. Something which began in 1980s and it went on and on. So we saw that when there was the Cold War era, the US tried to engulf and radicalize religious sentiments so as to counter the leftist and the socialist ideology. And then in 1990s, it started gaining ground, and it is still gaining ground. We see all over the globe there are rightist political parties in India, in Turkey, in Iran, everywhere. And people are becoming intolerant. They are becoming more obscurantist, fundamentalist.
No, who are these people? Now cut to the chase, please. Lokesh Jindal, I want you to cut to the chase and tell us, who are these fundamentalists? Who are these people that you're talking about?
See, when I'm talking about the Iranian leader like Ayatollah Khomeini, and when I'm talking about all these fundamentalist organizations, now these
I know you have a problem naming them, and I'm not going to force you.
Okay, the RSS
No,
India.
I understand. No, you're under no compulsion. Take your time. You make up your mind. Take your time. Sanju Verma, the national spokesperson of the BJP, coming in. Then I'm coming to Sanjay Jha and Shekhar Iyer after that.
You know, Pranesh, first things first, I unconditionally and unequivocally condemn the, vicious attack, the murderous attack on Salman Rushdie. I hope he recovers well soon enough. Having said that, I think we need to discuss the crux of the issue. And the crux of the issue is that we need to acknowledge that radical Islam is at the nub of the problem. You know, you need to name and shame radical Islamist elements without being apologetic about it. You know, I have been through Twitter in the last 24 or 36 odd hours. And while most people from either end of the spectrum have unequivocally condemned the murderous attack on Salman Rushdie, what I'm surprised by is the fact that the so-called leftist intellectuals and the so-called leftist academia, which prides itself in freedom of speech and freedom of expression, these are the people who are the first to name and shame if the perpetrator or the aggressor is a Hindu. But if the perpetrator or the aggressor or the hardliner is from the other side, is a radicalized Islamist element, you know, muh mein dahi jam jata hai, as they say in Hindi. And I'll tell you what, the, Salman Rushdie problem is not just about radicalization. It is also about the fact that for the first time on 5th of October 1988, it was the Rajiv Gandhi-led Congress government which not only imposed a ban on the satanic verses, but it also imposed a ban on Salman Rushdie's travel into India. Now, Natwar Singh,
that was the right thing to do, madam.
Yes, so let me
That
finish.
was the right thing to do.
Yeah, right thing to do. You know, right thing to do to embolden all those people who are threatening him. And when Salman Rushdie was invited to the Jaipur Literature Festival,
And then
the government did the right thing again by not giving him security.
Do you expect such form of a
You
book
know,
that would have caused a problem.
No, here you have the government surrendering to these people. And let me bring in Sanjay Jha. No, on the point that Sanju Verma made about Islamist intolerance and the radical elements. Now, 1 minute, Lokesh Jindal, calm down. Sanjay Jha, today, can you disagree with what Sanju Verma has said?
Pranesh, may I take 10 seconds to just finish what I was saying?
I'm coming to you. Sanju Verma, I'm coming to you, just taking a response from Mr. Jha.
Pranesh, I want to make 2 points here. Firstly, radicalization, extremism, religious bigotry, these are not the monopoly of just Islamic fundamentalists. Let's kind of understand that what happened in Christchurch, for example, and that's one among several laundry list of issues, was also an act of extreme right-wing and, shall I use the word, supremacist, white supremacists that are, in fact, a very serious danger, even as we talk to one of the world's greatest democracies, which is America. I don't want to get into the debate on Narendra Modi because I'm very glad that you have invited Atish Tasir, because when we are talking about intolerance of governments, and I'm not going to justify what the Congress party did in banning Salman Rushdie's book. One, and I want to make this disclosure, I'm a huge fan. My love for literature began with reading Midnight's Children. And I'm also, although I'm a liberal and a supporter of the Congress party, I've always felt that you should think twice before you take steps because the repercussions or the ramifications can be extremely grave. But because Atish is on the show, and I'm sure he's going to talk about it himself, when he wrote an article in a very popular international magazine calling Mr. Modi the divider-in-chief, well, what did the Indian government do? They prevented him from coming to India. So 1 minute, I didn't interrupt you, madam. Madam, I didn't interrupt you. Pranesh, if you can have a civilized...
Sanju Verma, let him make a point, then I'm coming to you for a response. Let him have his say. I'm coming to you for a response.
You're out of syllabus, Sanjay Jha, as always.
Okay. Now, Pranesh, if you can kindly stop her so that we can have a very civilized conversation. She won't stop.
Okay, let me then bring in Atish Tasir. You were talking about Atish Tasir.
1 minute.
Sanjay Jha.
Pranesh, don't get intimidated and bullied by her. Please do not get bullied by her. Let me finish my sentence.
Make your point, Sanjay Jha. Yes.
Yeah. And so the simple thing that I'm going to say here is all political parties are guilty of having played. I agree that it may not be minority appeasement, but definitely there is a paranoia about the political repercussions of certain authors or public intellectuals or even cinema, as we are witnessing in the case of Lal Singh Chadha. This is basically a democracy which is a work in progress. India is not yet what I would call as a mature democracy.
I think, Mr. Sanjay Jha, I have high regards for you, sir. I really do. But, I think you're mixing up too many issues in this. We have a debate at hand. We are talking about Islamist intolerance, the religious bigotry, and you began by taking a position, and now you are, I'm sorry for lack of a better word, all over the place. And before I bring in Sanju Verma, let me go to Atish Tasir. 1 minute. What do you make of, Atish, what do you make of the horrendous attack, the horrific attack on Salman Rushdie, first of all?
Well, I'm absolutely appalled. All of us are really, really shaken by it. I'm upstate now, and it occurred not very far from here. And we've been just completely shattered by it. We do have some good news. I heard very recently from a friend that they said that Salman had made it. His heart was 90% breathing on his own. His brain activity was normal. He was alert. One eye open, no blood clots. So we've come out of a period of terrible uncertainty, and now there's a sense that at least he is going to live, and he for the most part will be okay.
I'm coming to you. Now, Shekhar Iyer, you've been listening intently to all sides so far. How should this be read? The attack on Salman Rushdie. Is this just an ordinary attack, or we should call it what it is? The ugly face of Islamist intolerance.
Well, Pranesh, the threat to Salman Rushdie, which all of us thought had ebbed because long years have passed, and the Iranian government had also said that it was not backing that fatwa anymore. There was a period when it became easier for Salman Rushdie to travel. That is why he came to India after Vajpayee government lifted the ban in '99, but he came to India in 2000 to promote the film on his book Midnight Children. But what is worrying for all of us is it may take years, but the threat will remain. That's what worries us. After what we saw in India too recently, the controversy involving Nupur Shah and others. And the real fear is there will be some people around, even after, the groups that call for that kind of extremist action, even if they have given up, there will be somebody who is, still nurses a huge hurt or a perceived hurt and can do something. That's what this has shown, because Salman Rushdie himself thought that the threat has ended, actually, because nobody was talking about it and he was traveling. And the unfortunate part was there was no security for him in New York because nobody really thought this would happen to him. So, and upon the question, why India banned the book, that is something that keeps coming again and again. But we must also remember that Rajiv Gandhi, who was Prime Minister then, the book was banned, I think, very few days. It was published in UK, I think in September of '88, and by October, less than a month, the government of India decided to ban the book by stopping the import of the book. In fact, they invoked the Customs Act to stop the book. And the reason we'll have to understand is Rajiv Gandhi then was politically in a weak situation. He was in no position take a high ground.
I understand that reason, but let's understand the reason behind this hate. The point that I'm trying to get at is that 40 years later, we've come from Salman Rushdie to Nupur Sharma. The mindset hasn't changed. Times have. Mindset hasn't changed. Shekhar Iyer.
Well, it's not about the mindset, but you have a huge population in this country who will go by whatever is told to them, rather than, they are not in a position to read the book. And even if they were to read the book, they would not understand, a book that is, which is described as a magic realism of that kind, because we have a huge population here who are not going to read it themselves to decide. They will go by whatever is said from the pulpit. So we are a sensitive country, we have to appreciate that. We cannot ignore that fact because nobody is going to read the book. Even those who read the book, let's understand that also. All of us are not in that kind of...
No, it's not just about reading the book, Shekhar Iyer. It's about reading this murderous fatwa. The Sar Tan Se Juda mindset that I'm talking about, Sanju Verma.
Exactly. Yes. Pranesh, I want to start by first putting out a disclaimer. Sanjay Jha started by saying he will not Modi, but for the next 2 minutes, all he could think of was Modi, Modi, Modi. He is the master of whataboutery. Be it as it may, coming to the more moot issue, I think, the fact of the matter is that we are a society which says that we should take a stand against bigotry. Certainly we should. But at the same time, when a Umesh Pole is killed in ISIS-style beheading, when, Kanhaiya Lal is beheaded in Udaipur, or for that matter, when a Praveen Nettaru is again shot mercilessly in Karnataka, you look at the manner in which the so-called liberal class behaves. They condemn the killing, but not one of them has the gumption, the guts, or the audacity to name the aggressors who all belong to a certain creed. And the creed is radical Islamist. Point number one. Point number two, please do not make a false equivalence between the Christchurch killing and the other killings that have happened. In the last 5 to 6 years, be it the Orlando bombing, be it the Manchester bombing, be it the Mecca Medina bombing, be it the Charlie Hebdo attack, be it the Brussels bombing, or for that matter, many years back, but still something that is fresh in our memories.
No, point taken. Point taken. Sanjay Jha is responding. Sanjay Jha has his hand up. He is responding to that. Coming to you, Mr. Jindal, after this.
The perpetrators
let him now respond. Yes.
Have always followed the politics of appeasement. Rajiv Gandhi was the
Pranesh.
He is responding to you, Sanju Verma.
God. Yeah. Pranesh, in simple terms, the world is polarized and it is getting further exacerbated because political leaders are beginning to play on religious identity. This is the age of identity politics. And I just want to say this because, we should be responsible. All of us on the panel are responsible people. We speak in public platforms. And I don't think this is the time and the moment to try and further aggravate what is already, in my opinion, a very sensitive situation. I think anyone who has even heard of Salman Rushdie, he's 75 years. I mean, his writing, he's a genius. He's lived most of his life hiding in fear. And let me tell you, for him,
let him make his point. Sanju Verma, this is not. You've made a point.
This
he was
woman
not
is
interrupting. Let him have his say. You've made a point. He is responding to you, Sanju Verma ji.
Rather than indicting euphemisms and
Pranesh.
Yes, Mr. Jha, make your point. Sorry about that.
Can you, for a case,
Pranesh,
condemn what Rajiv Gandhi did way back in
can't believe this.
Rather than grandstanding? Please stop grandstanding.
Okay.
Take a clear position.
Okay.
Sanjay Jha, take a
He's taking a position. He's taking a position. Come on, Mr. Jha. Come on.
Rajiv Gandhi did to Salman
Okay.
Let him make
Pranesh,
a point.
Is she the co-anchor of this program? Is she the co-anchor of this program?
No,
If she is, I will answer her.
I'm calling out.
She's certainly not, Mr. Jha. You make your point. Sanju Verma, you've made your point. Hear the other side, please.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a statement here, and I don't care a fig what bigots say on the other side of the fence. My simple statement is this: that today we all need to be very careful when we are beginning to label communities, etc. What's happened to Salman Rushdie is disgusting, is repugnant. It's horrific. And it is also, in a great number of ways, a manifestation of the ugliness of polarization that I hold political leaders responsible for. Whether it's in America, whether it's happening in Turkey, whether it's happening in India, I think it's politicians who are playing around with the lives of the ordinary citizens of our country.
No, but Sanjay Jha, the point that you made, you began by saying that, look, Salman Rushdie is 75 years old. On that point, I want to go back to Atish Taseer, because, what's most unnerving and disturbing at the same time is the fact that this is, in a way, the execution of the fatwa that was given 40 years ago. And nothing has changed. Here you have a situation where a 24-year-old man is the attacker. Atish Taseer, what do you make of that?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the Ayatollah represents a pretty hateful ideology. It was the ideology that killed my father, and no matter how long ago it was, obviously any vigilante, any individual can take it up and act on that. And,
absolutely.
And it's a terrifying outcome.
Are we then wrong, Mr. Taseer, to call it a chilling example of Islamist intolerance and extremism? Why should the world not unite to call out this hate?
Let's unite and calm out this hate.
And how do you think we can do that? Coming to you, Sanju Verma, coming to you. How do you think, Mr. Taseer, we can do that?
I mean, I think that we're already doing that. I think that, that a moment like this is a huge wake-up call. It's a moment to understand that the ramifications of, for me, I think it's so chilling that Twitter has let the Ayatollah reinstate or put back the fatwa and say that it still stands. And Twitter needs to be sites like that, need to be very careful about giving voice to people like the Ayatollah of Iran.
Right. So wake-up call, Sanjay Jha. Wake-up call, says Atish Taseer.
Absolutely, Pranesh. He is absolutely right. Because let me tell you, the Iranian government, which at one point, for a moment, a brief aberration perhaps, had indicated that they were not going to proceed with the fatwa, later on actually further, made it even more inflammatory. So this is why Salman Rushdie has been attacked. And it also tells you how the young are so impressionable. And this man who's been arrested, the ghastly perpetrator of the attack on Salman Rushdie, tells you of the vulnerabilities in our society today. And Atish is right, the role of social media, the role of fake news, the role of propaganda, and above all, the role of political leadership.
Fake media, propaganda, all that, but you are still not addressing the problem. Sanju Verma, what is the problem?
Can I come? Pranesh,
Mr. Jindal, I'm coming to you. Mr. Jindal, I'm coming to you. Sanju Verma, what do you think is the problem that we should address and call it out?
You know, Pranesh, have you noticed the hypocrisy that has been showcased right now, right here, live on your debate? Sanjay Jha, the suspended leader who nobody takes seriously, he's lucky he gets the platform on Times now.
No, ma'am, let's be civil. Let's not call out, no. Sanju Verma, please, let's be civil here. Please, do not take personal jibes, ma'am, please. Please.
Pranesh, Sanjay Jha gave a bhashan on bigotry. He gave a bhashan on propaganda. He gave a bhashan on radicalization. Not once did he say that he condemned what Rajiv Gandhi did way back in 1988. We are coming back to square one. We need to understand and take cognizance of the problem. And the problem is that jihad today and the jihadi mindset is at the root cause of the issue. It is not about Iran issuing fatwa which was carried out 30 or 40 years later. The problem is that, people who talk of majoritarianism, I will just give you a small example. People say that after 2014, the Modi government has, brought in majoritarian politics in India, but this is the same lot which refuses to unequivocally condemn.
Madam, who is responsible for lynching murders? Who is responsible for lynching murders in India?
Okay, then let's have Lokesh Jindal answer that. Lokesh Jindal, would you take a position?
I would like to have a 2-minute patience. Now, see,
Sanju Verma, Lokesh Jindal responding to you.
When we talk about these aspects like fundamentalism and obscurantism, they emanate from the concept of infallibility of a sacred text. When all legal, philosophical, scientific, social, economic, all institutions, they trace their origin to an infallible text, such as be it belonging to any religion, there is fundamentalism and obscurantism. Now, in the 18th century Europe, we had seen when there was the Enlightenment movement, there had to be an enlightened despotism, an enlightened government that enabled critical thinking so that people, they could emancipate themselves from self-imposed darkness. As Immanuel Kant famously stated, that only with critical outlook, when the people themselves become the judge of what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, immoral, they can subject every information to critical outlook, and only then they know what's right, what's wrong. So
great.
The point is,
now, Lokesh Jindal, now that you've given us the background, what do you think it is?
What we need is an enlightened,
what we need, I think,
government.
No, tell me if I'm wrong. What we need
rather than the present
is fine to call out hate. And in this case,
now we are having a
what is this?
That in ancient India there was head transplant.
No, but let's be specific, Mr. Jindal. Let's be specific to what happened with Salman Rushdie.
So over here, the point is we should condemn fundamentalism and infallibility culture, which is growing at a larger pace. I mean, people like Zakir Naik, people like
Zakir Naik, Osama bin Laden, all the other of his tribe. No, 1 minute.
That everything scientific originated from religion. Now, this is utter nonsense. And this provides...
But you're not answering the aspect on intolerance, Lokesh Jindal.
See,
you're overlooking that.
When a person thinks that a religious text is infallible, whatever is being stated in religious text cannot be questioned. A person finds reason to give effect to any particular...
Mr. Jindal, I'm sure you can do better, but perhaps you're not in a mood to... take a stand, take a position today. Sanjay Jha raising his hand.
The present government is...
Pranesh.
No, Sanjay Jha. No, 1 minute, 1 minute. Sanjay Jha. Yes.
Pranesh, there is a rising level of intolerance across the world. Why are we trying to pussyfoot around and not accept that in India, you have had the public call in religious gathering, calling for a genocide of Muslims? Will the BJP spokesperson respond to it? Are we doing lynching murders in our country like Ku Klux Klan was doing in Mississippi? Aren't we ashamed of ourselves?
You should be ashamed.
What are we talking about here? Let's bite the bullet and face the reality.
Nobody is rationalizing violence against Muslims. But Sanjay Jha, the problem with you is you will sit here and give a bhashan about Narendra Modi, about majoritarianism, about...
Madam, we are on the way...
Lokesh Jindal, calm down. Let her respond to what Sanjay Jha said. Coming to you.
Will you condemn Sar Kanse Juta sloganeering? Will you condemn Narayan Takbir sloganeering? Sanjay Jha does not have the guts to even name Rajiv Gandhi. And then he sits here and says, oh my God.
No, I think he began by saying that he didn't agree with Rajiv Gandhi. And I think if you press him on, he will say that he doesn't stand with what Rajiv decided then.
The politics of appeasement followed by the Congress, I will just quickly tell you, Shah Bano judgment, Shah Bano judgment was reversed by Rajiv Gandhi, and within 2 years, the other decision which he took, simply capitulating to the...
I want to once again underline the fact that let's not mistake this attack as some kind of ordinary, misguided youth walking up to Rushdie because he didn't like what he wrote and said, okay, Mr. Rushdie, you will have to pay for this. This is the Sar Tan Se Juda mindset. Sanjay Jha, finally the last word on the show to you. Isn't this the Sar Tan Se Juda mindset and the wake-up call that Atish Tasir is talking about? We should all wake up to the Islamist intolerance and the reality of it.
Well, let me tell you, Pranesh, you're absolutely right. I mean, the kind of hate, the absolutely brutal manner in which Salman Rushdie has been attacked, clearly the intent was to murder him. And, it is so providential that Salman Rushdie is still alive, and hopefully he will make it, and hopefully he'll write another blockbuster book. But you're right, there's an ideological brainwashing going on all over the world. And the reason why I speak with some responsibility on your show is because we as a country have to also play a role in healing these wounds. And we can't be tomorrow accused of playing the same majoritarian politics that is creating a degree of extremism that will tomorrow get out of control.
All right, with that we've run out of time. Sanju Verma, Shekhar Iyer, Atish Tasir, Sanjay Jha, Lokesh Jindal, thank all of you for joining us on this debate. With that, taking a short break, lots more lined up on the other side. Viewers, please stay with us.